Good afternoon, this is Oxinity Channel on Education. Today we hopefully will answer some questions regarding can you prepare me for an exam or what exam should I take in order to certify my level. We're going to talk about evaluation processes and what types of exams are there, are they really necessary. So exams will be under examination today. I'm here with Rob Wiley and Graham Bell in Barcelona. And then we have Paul in Barcelona as well. Patricia and Gabriel are connecting from Madrid. Hello, guys. Good to see you all. My name is Radmila Gurkova, so let's get started. So I believe that the results and outcomes in any teaching process are a result up to a certain extent on how we test knowledge. So the way we set an exam is going to determine the way we study, the way we prepare for it, what we are going to learn, and how motivated we will be. But furthermore, it's going to also affect on how the teachers prepare, because if the exam has a certain format, we always think about that format and how I overcome this exam, so how I pass the exam. For instance, just to put an example, if we have a written test, only a written test, we may not pay attention to pronunciation issues, for instance. So that will lead to one outcome. So let's talk about it. Let's talk how the way we test knowledge actually affects the way we study, what the students learn, and how motivated they are, if that's okay with you. Okay. So guys, let's say that whenever we want to know whether we can communicate with someone in English, we ask the question, do you speak English? Right. But when we test knowledge, it's usually in a written way. Is that not contradictory up to a certain extent? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you're testing this written and reading form, but then you ask the question to speak English, which is verbal and listening, and it just doesn't work. It's like you test the thing that you want, the opposite of what you're really trying to teach.
Exactly. Sometimes I go to companies and whenever they want to know their level, I tell them the teacher will call you and in 5 minutes they will get their level, right? Only by testing production. Okay, so how do you think, imagine, let's put different scenarios here. Imagine that we have a written test, which is quite standard in language learning for language testing. So we have a multiple choice, gap fill activities. How do you think a student would prepare for a multiple choice exam with gap fills?
They're just gonna, if it's just a written exam, they're just gonna study textbooks and I guess learn cheats.
Yeah, that's Yeah,
do
exactly.
mock papers as well.
Mock papers, mock exams, repeat.
And all these things you can do online, you can find mock exams to practice with, and you can use an application if you want. I mean, essentially, there's no interaction involved.
Okay, what will they be missing? I don't know, guys. Can you hear us in Madrid? So. Okay, Gabriel, you seem to hear as well. So, what do you think? What aspects will students focus if the exam is a multiple choice test type?
I guess. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I guess with written tests, particularly with multiple choice, you're just focusing extremely on the form. So, whether you include an S in the third person like this, it's plural or singular, but you don't actually have any emphasis on the kind of practical aspects of the language, the function, like when you can use it, which situations it's appropriate for, things like that.
So students don't actually pay attention to real interaction there.
Yeah, I think that's
because
fair.
that's not quite relevant. So what other aspects may not be so relevant?
Phonetics.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't need to. They're looking at spelling, so they don't have to understand how an ED ending actually works. It's why you get so many students who think you know, can I join you on LinkedIn? Like,
That's a classic.
It's the best example you can get.
but I understand why that happens.
Yeah.
Because if they're just testing on written, then they're never going to learn the ED, and there's so many.
Do you correct them when they say LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a laugh and then correct them, and they're like, "Why are you laughing?" And then you kind of explain. But it's the same with Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi, stuff like that. And you know, they have a laugh and then you correct them.
Right. So.
But yeah,
you
sorry,
want-
yeah, I was thinking that's true. I found that particularly a lot with, for example, when you teach Chinese students, they tend to learn a lot by textbooks and by exams, And so when it comes to teaching them, they have an absolutely perfect understanding of the grammar, the how English operates as a system, but often their pronunciation is almost incomprehensible because they've just never had an English speaker to practice with. And so this has caused a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Do you think what has to happen so that we change that outcome? How should we teach? How should we test knowledge?
Through conversation, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, in a functional way.
Yeah, because we don't have the luxury in like in Spanish, you know, you pronounce everything as it's written, no, and the same letters are pronounced the same way, whereas in English you don't have that luxury, right? So I know UGH can be pronounced in about 6 different ways or something ridiculous, you know. So unless you hear it, you're not gonna know.
Well, that's right. And I think sometimes you forget how you learn to speak even your first language. I mean, I could speak before I could write. So, you know, I always want to learn anything new. I want to learn how it sounds first before I apply the spelling, because let's face it, English spelling is nothing like how it sounds. You know, and especially from the Spanish to... The Spanish is a written-led language and English is verbal. So, you know, if they don't ever... If they're always getting shown it written, then they're going to... The first time they learn it or they have the inner voice, it's not going to be right because, and I don't blame them because it's so difficult.
Yeah. And if you work in English or you're traveling, obviously you travel, you're gonna be speaking with people, not writing. You know, if you've got meetings in English, it's gonna, you know, again, maybe you've got emails or whatever, but it's primarily gonna be, I don't know, video conferences or.
Well, it's quicker, especially for business. Business, if it's written down, you know, it's not quick enough.
Yeah.
You can't beat a phone call or a quick Skype to make a business deal. You don't want to send endless emails.
It's something I try to encourage students to do because often I've had loads of students that they work in English with maybe people in Germany or Holland or wherever, and they get a phone call and the first thing is like, send me an email, because they're really nervous about speaking on the phone, or they don't want to do a video conference. It's like, put it in an email, and you know, and it's trying to encourage them not to always, the first thing is put it in an email, you know, getting them used to.
Do you have a lot of requests specifically for tests? Like, prepare me for this because I need to pass this test.
Occasionally.
Occasionally.
Especially I think as well here, like in Spain, lots of people are focused on, I need to get the advanced, or I need to get the first, you know, and there's a lot of focus from that type of stuff, you know.
Absolutely. If Patricia, if you hear us now, can you explain a little bit the situation here in Spain and why is that obsession with tests?
Yeah, we have this, you know, I don't know, crazy thing that if you don't have anything certified, it's because you're not good at that, which is completely, I think in my opinion, it's just the opposite. I've, you know, come across like a lot of people who say, I see someone, and then you can have, you know, a conversation with them. But it's true, and then it's like, we test, or we teach people, not us, but big institutions do a lot. And this is the main problem here, I think. But we teach people to pass exams. And that's it. I mean, you need to be certified, you know, to promote, or to get your degree, certificate, or whatever. And that's it. You don't really need to speak English, and we are completely confused about that. I mean, you do need first to speak English, and then we'll see if you pass the test or not. I mean, maybe if I have to pass a Spanish test, maybe I fail, I don't know. Yeah. But at least I know that I'm fluent in that language. And the good thing about learning the language is like, if you're just waiting to find a question with the right answer, but suddenly that question is not on the test and the answer doesn't appear in one of the options, you get blocked completely. Yeah. You know, if you say, people say, well, if you see a for or a since in a question, you know, the answer is going to be present perfect. Okay, and if I don't have the present perfect option, what happens there?
Yeah.
I get blocked completely. So if you know how to use the language, I mean, it doesn't really matter what answer is going to be there. You're going to know, what answer is the right one. But it's true that we need to be C1 for everything. Like even for teaching, we've talked about this before, and we are completely obsessed with these qualification things, and I don't think they are useless. They are useless completely. I mean, I don't think they are useful at all.
Not for the students, not for the students in the
not
format.
for the students, obviously.
Exactly, but yet someone benefits. So who benefits from all this
Oh
industry?
yeah.
Well,
Well, the
we
people
know,
who-
we know the
Yeah,
answer.
we all know.
We all know the answer.
We know the answer.
So whenever you have a student that insists on that, I mean, I guess up to a certain extent we have to understand what's the necessity behind that insistence. But
For sure.
but do you advise your students, say, okay, let's think together. If we focus your learning process to pass an exam, what you will get, and if we focus on just learning the language, what you will get. Do you do that? Are you advisors as
Yeah.
well as teachers?
Yeah.
There's only one place where I kind of bow down and go, okay, I know why they need it, and I think Patricia was talking about this, is when it comes to the education system. So to go to university, they are looking and they won't budge.
Yeah.
To be a teacher, they won't budge. The C1, and if they have to do it. But for jobs, what I say to a lot of my potential clients is I go, well, look, we have LinkedIn now, which is a glorified CV.
Yeah.
Instead of having a C1 certificate, would you not rather I endorsed your skills, or other people endorsed your ability that you've worked with in English? Because for me that looks better.
Absolutely.
If you go in, because you can pass a B2 certificate 5 years ago and you can't speak.
Yeah.
But if you've got a recent endorsement, or you've worked in English and you can show that on your CV, and then you go to the job interview and you blow them away, that shows you can use the language. And so for work purposes, I always say forget exams.
That's a very good argument.
But we do have a problem there, and it's like in most of the interviews that you may have through your life, is like the interviewer won't have any idea of English.
Yeah.
So he won't be able to interview you in English. So he will, ask for the certification straight away. It's easier. Like you have a C1, fantastic. I don't know what a C1 is or whatever. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the real problem.
Even to get to the interview stage, right? That's again, I agree with everything that's been said, and I'm not a huge fan. But even to get to an interview stage, sometimes they do require it. And whether I agree with that or not is a different matter. Yeah.
It's the same for teachers. I've seen this companies asking for a CELTA when the teacher has an MA in linguistics. And you're like, come on. People want this certificate even though they don't know what it means, and know that another one's even better.
Exactly.
Rob, did you like chemistry at school?
Yeah.
Let me ask you that.
No. I still have nightmares about it to this day. Anything chemistry, physics, forget it. I'm out. Don't want to hear it. Not interested. Don't understand it.
What was wrong about it?
What was right with it? It just wasn't for me. We didn't get on very well. So it was just.
Like the teacher.
Didn't like the teacher. Don't get me wrong, when we were making explosions and stuff, loved all that side of stuff, asked what was going on there, not a clue, but obviously you have to do it. But I promise you, the day I finished my chemistry and I don't have to do it ever again was a very, very happy day in my life. Yeah, no. But you have to still go through the process of having to do the exams and all that stuff that goes.
So that was an exam, a written one?
Yeah.
And how did you prepare for it?
I tried to memorize exactly my notes that I'd taken, and when a word kind of matched, okay, I need to do that, just kind of copied word for word what I'd memorized in my head, and put it down on paper. And that was the only way, because,
No. So your motivation was pretty much zero, and
it wasn't very much. And like I say, it was just like I was just memorizing the stuff to pass the exam. Ask me what I was writing, probably don't have a clue, but I was just writing word for word what I'd studied or what I'd read in a textbook, and that was it. And do I remember any of it now, or do I have a clue? No.
Okay.
But I was able to pass the exam just because I just literally copy paste, and
I have a feeling something similar happens at school with 30, like with big groups when a lot of students have to be tested at the same time. I have the feeling that they just memorize words and tenses to pass the exam, but then little production and
Yeah.
little outcome.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I passed the exams just, but I have no idea what anything was. I don't know, did you have anything like that, Graham, where you were
Yeah,
like just
tons.
copy-paste?
Tons. If I
Every
failed,
subject.
I failed higher physics twice. Just couldn't. I mean, I can't bring myself into doing it. It's why I don't like to prepare students for doing exams, because I don't like the whole eat and regurgitate mentality of learning. When I became a teacher, it was something I point blank was refusing to do. I wanted to teach people how to speak the language. I didn't want to teach them shortcuts that were actually going to be a discredit to their ability to speak the language. Because if someone gains confidence by me giving them cheats to pass an exam, then they really are not. They're not prepared to speak the language, and that's not what I would become an English teacher for. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And yet we talk about different types of exams. So can you explain, because teachers have to know that there are different ways of testing knowledge. We will then talk about how we do it in Obscenity, but there are some formats which are quite commonly used. What are they, Graham?
For the two different ways, well, there's formative assessment and there's summative assessment. So I remember my mum telling me that the only reason summative assessment exists is so that classroom sizes can get bigger. So that's all your tests. You literally put it down in front of people, they do an exam, and you get a score. So I know where my class are at.
Right.
But when you've got a much smaller group, you can do formative assessment. So I don't need to do an exam. I can tell how well someone is speaking because I have 3 or 4 students, and then I can change the way I teach as a result of their knowledge. I can constantly change my classes week by week. Whereas summative is much more rigid. You've got a program to get through. I've got to get you through for the B2 exam.
Yeah. You've got an exam, specific time, specific place.
Same class, you know exactly rudimentary what you're doing in a syllabus you follow through. Whereas with formative, you can opt in and out of parts of syllabus when you realise they have it already. You can, you don't have to sit. If you're going to do the present perfect, but they already got it, then you can move forward. You can bounce around and you can do a lot more depth of teaching.
Absolutely.
I think.
So, in your opinion, what's the best way of testing knowledge?
Is that a trick question?
It's not a trick question.
And see, for me, the best way of testing knowledge is when you've installed some skills, whatever it be, whatever functions or grammar tools, is seeing the students comfortably use them and seeing their confidence grow. Especially like at various levels. I remember having a student tell me, I'm thinking in English about my day when I go for my jog in the morning.
Yeah.
That for me was a big sign of like, wow.
Okay.
And little things like this, or they're starting to, if it's business, they're starting to use English at work, or they're not asking for an email, they're doing phone calls. These are my little indicators.
And for you guys, Paul, Patricia, and Gabriel?
So for me, just like Graham said, conversation. Just trying to test their knowledge, trying to test their confidence, test their grasp of English. What are they using the same phrases over and over again, or using different phrases?
Okay. All right. So your evaluation is based on production entirely. Patricia.
Yeah. So just
Well, continue, Paul. Continue.
So just like I say, just continue what they've learned. Just test them. Try and throw in some things that they maybe didn't learn, but have they picked up anyway? Like perhaps I did some reading outside of the class, and then I just throw in some phrases that we didn't cover, or in other texts. Yeah. Like that.
All right. How about you guys? Gabriel and Patricia?
Same kind of thing as what they basically, comfort is the main thing. If they're able to phrase without you having to prompt them, if they can say it on their own line, And yeah, if they can kind of play with structures a bit, which shows like a real understanding. They don't just, like you said, it's not just, you can understand to say, you know, I saw, I have seen, but if you can kind of use them naturally in a sentence, that's a good sign.
Yeah, I think it's really cool when you see them teaching. When you've installed like a tense or whatever, and then they use it with different vocabulary. So they've not just learned the way you fed it to them. So say like you teach them some function or syntax, but then they use that in a different context. Like even something basic like I have a brother, and they go I have a car, and you're like wow, they've understood possession. It's those little transfers of skills that you're like oh wow, not for me. I geek out.
So for me, the best possible way of testing knowledge is, first of all, you have to know what your goal is. And that is going to be given through an activity or a lesson. It depends on what methodology you follow. But in our case, each of our activities has an objective, has a goal. So I would like students to learn this vocabulary or these functions, or to gain fluency through this content. So this is the first thing that I would make sure that I understand the objective of my activity. I would then practice it with them, activate it. We call it to activate all this language, which is put it into practice. And I would pay a lot of attention to outcomes and analyze, okay, so up to what extent they've acquired it, do they need more repetitions or not? And at the end of it, I will get my input there, so we know that we can at the same time evaluate the activity and evaluate the student. That would be my process. So that will generate a series of data that will, when we compile them together, so activity after activity, if I've done this process, I will know where my student stands, and so will they. So in this process, the system then will identify what is not so consolidated, what knowledge needs repetition, and is going to help the teacher identify it and teach it in the following class. So that links to another thing that we have here in Obscenity, which is we share activities, we prepare activities and we share activities. And we use the activities precisely to measure acquisition. So through each activity I have the chance to provide input. Now I have a dilemma here, because there are teachers that don't understand that activities are exactly for that, to give me an objective, to give me purpose, to give me a chance to practice something, for students to learn, and the chance to evaluate. Therefore they say, I'm not going to do the activity because I dislike the activity. All right. The whole process behind of teaching, learning, evaluating is kind of forgotten. It's non-existent. What can we tell these teachers? How should they use the activities? Because I have here Paul, who is a great activity writer, and Rob, and of course Graham, who has passed his experience onto so many teachers. How should they apply the activities to test knowledge and to evaluate? How should they use the activities? So that it's not, oh, I like it, I do it, I don't like it, I don't do it. What should teachers understand before doing an activity or when doing an activity?
Well, we've got three types of activity. So we've got topic, grammar, and vocabulary. And the ones that are the most dependent upon the syllabus that they need to do these are the grammar and the vocabulary ones. So often, if you don't like the way it's laid out, you can look at the syllabus and you can teach it. If it's vocabulary and it's 8 words, we're teachers. If it was that laid out, then we wouldn't need to be there. So that I can work with it. I know Rob does it, and I know Paul does it, and all you guys too. You can think outside the box. You can deliver it in many ways. You can test it. There's sometimes I don't have to teach an activity because I look at it and I use the intro questions, and I've heard the student doing it before, but I still rate the activity and let the system know that they've achieved this, so that it gives them something more difficult. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Something similar?
Yeah, completely.
Don't you think that you have to know also the people that write the activities so that you understand them better? Or not necessarily? If the teacher is skillful, then everything flows, and if the activity is well written, then you don't have to.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if the activity is well written, maybe, you know, you have to think outside the box less, but I think anyone, maybe not so much for teachers who are starting out because, you know, they're just new and whatever, but I think as experienced teachers, as we all are, we are able to take an activity that maybe isn't the best activity in the world, but we're able to adapt it and teach it.
I think like saying you don't like it. Yeah, well, maybe you don't like it. Maybe the student does, though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's like you gotta.
Maybe I like it and you don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember Graham gave me quite good advice.
Oh.
Yeah.
First time for everything.
Yeah, I taught a class. We'd spent ages, like half an hour on one activity, and he was saying you don't need to be glued to every single stage of the activity, as long as you focus on the objectives, because that's the most important part, and then you can kind of combine them to an extent. If you know, I mean, yeah, if there's vocabulary, it's quite straightforward what they're getting at it. But if it's a topic or something, just try and think about the function of why they would ever need to be talking about this thing, and then you can play around with them as long as you know the objective.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Sometimes I don't know, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but we discard an activity only because we don't understand it, and we don't understand it because we haven't had the chance to prepare it. So it's something that we don't know much of, and it's more technical. So we say, "Oh, I'm not teaching it. It's a bad activity," where it is not. It's actually that I have to prepare a little bit more. As trainers, what do you advise your trainees actually? How much to stick to the activities? How much to go off-road? Do you give them any guidance and advice on this?
Yeah, I think if you're comfortable, then go off, go off on a tangent. I think, like I said before, I think maybe newer teachers tend to want to stick to the question, like the intro questions. Okay, I've got to do this, or the wrap up, But I think if you're comfortable and you can go off a little bit.
I can think of an example of some of the TEFL students were out and they were watching Ashley teach, and he was working in the Human Resources department, and it was all about human resources vocabulary, but he just engaged in the conversation knowing what the grammar was and knowing what the vocabulary was for that class. He just had an hour conversation, and apparently they were just bringing in, and he covered all the vocabulary, he covered all the grammar, and he got 4 or 5 activities done, but the students didn't even feel it.
And there you have you had the perfect chance to actually test what they know and what they need to improve. Actually, I have an opinion here from Coral. She says that she sometimes gives students an online exam or free online level test to pinpoint areas that need development and areas that they have confidence. Basically, she uses it to prove a point. Sometimes it's okay to identify what she has to work on, and sometimes it's to give people confidence, give the students confidence that they have actually learned. That's quite wise. So here, as I see it, or as she puts it, the objective is never, or the ultimate goal is not to pass an exam, but the test is just as a tool to proving something, either to give me information about what I need to work more, or and to give people the confidence that they have learned. Okay, well, great. Guys, do you have anything else to add to this talk?
I think that just on what you were saying about the testing, what Coral did, is we have a lot of vocabulary activities which are phonetics, so pronunciation.
Yeah.
And what I've seen some people doing, I thought is really cool, is they won't teach the activity unless they have to. So they will just be listening for the students,
all the time.
and if the student makes that particular phonetic mistake, then they go, hey, you're not doing that quite right, let's look at here. Or the same with your grammar, like you don't have to sit and go, right, we're going to go through these. You set up your class going, I'm going to see if they can do that, because it's a nice way to take them to, hey, you're not doing that quite right, I've got this cool activity.
Yeah, it's a nice link as well. And again, I think that's something that comes with experience.
Experience and preparation.
Of course,
yeah,
of course.
absolutely. Getting used to it. Again, well, that's been a great talk. Thank you for your opinions. A little bit, well, some difficulties listening to sometimes. Sorry about that. But overall, great talk. Many thanks. Let me finish with one quote by Benjamin Franklin, actually. Tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn. So let's, yeah, wonderful. Let's stop teaching and let's start involving our students in the learning process. Thank you guys. See you next week.
Bye.
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 Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.